The casket is halfway into the ground when Henry Cole decides to destroy his own invisibility. Riverside Cemetery spreads beneath autumn sky, all careful landscaping and old money monuments. 200 mourners in designer black surround Pamela Dandy's mahogany casket. The minister recites the 23rd Psalm. Cemetery workers prepare the hydraulic mechanism. Gilbert Dandy stands broken beside the daughter he believes is dead. Nobody's watching the back of the crowd where a homeless man in a stained gray coat calculates his last chance to stop a murder. Henry Cole has been invisible for 5 years. Good at it, too. Invisibility keeps you alive on the streets, lets you slip past security, scavenge food from estate loading docks, survive in a world that decided you don't matter anymore. But 3 nights ago, invisibility made him a witness. And today, visibility might change everything. The hydraulics hum. The casket descends. And Henry makes his choice. He runs. People scatter as he crashes through the mourners. A woman in pearls gasps. Someone shouts for security. Henry doesn't care. He spent 3 days stealing medical supplies, 3 nights synthesizing an antidote in an abandoned warehouse, 3 sleepless cycles of terror that he'll be too late. The casket drops another 6 inches toward the grave. Stop. Henry throws himself at the controls, slamming the emergency brake. Metal shrieks. The mechanism freezes. The casket hangs suspended 2 feet down, tilted at an angle that makes the body inside shift visibly. Chaos erupts. Security guards rush him. The crowd surges forward. Phones lift like a constellation. And Henry Cole, invisible for 5 years, refuses to be silenced now. She's alive. He screams it, his voice raw. Pamela Dandy is alive. They poison her to look dead, and you're about to bury her breathing. The words detonate across the cemetery like a bomb. And everything that happens next, the antidote, the revival, the exposure of conspirators, the viral video that will change all their lives, begins with this single, desperate moment. A homeless man who refused to stay silent. A billionaire's daughter who refused to die. And a funeral that became a resurrection. 3 nights before the funeral, Henry Cole crouches in the service entrance of the Dandy estate, invisible as always. The kitchen staff threw out good food tonight. Half a container of pasta primavera, bread rolls still soft in their basket, a slice of chocolate cake with only 1 bite missing. He eats slowly, methodically, the way hunger teaches you to eat when you don't know where the next meal comes from. The loading dock smells like garbage and expensive life. Steam rises from a vent above him. November cold seeps through his coat, but this corner blocks the wind. He's claimed it for 2 weeks now, timing his arrivals for after the security patrol passes at 9. A window on the 2nd floor glows yellow. Voices drift down, sharp with urgency. Henry freezes, pasta halfway to his mouth. The final dose goes in tonight. The voice is male, smooth, confident. Marcus Graves, though Henry doesn't know the name yet. By morning she'll present as completely deceased. No heartbeat detectable by standard equipment. Body temperature will drop to ambient. Pupils fixed and dilated. A woman responds, clinical and cold. The tetrodotoxin derivative works faster than the previous generation. 8 to 12 hours of complete systemic paralysis. Respiratory suppression below measurable threshold. To any examination, she'll appear dead. Henry's hand tightens on the plastic fork. Tetrodotoxin derivative. The words slice through 15 years of fog and failure and pull him back to another life. White lab coats. Peer-reviewed journals. A university office with his name on the door. How long do we have? Marcus again, urgent now. 48 hours maximum before metabolic functions begin to recover. The woman's voice carries the certainty of someone who's done the calculations. That's why the burial must happen quickly. Closed casket. Immediate interment. No embalming. Obviously, we've already explained to Gilbert that Pamela wouldn't have wanted that. Once she's underground, even if she begins to wake, no one will hear. Henry's breath stops in his chest. The next morning? Marcus asks. Too soon. Too suspicious. The woman pauses. Day after tomorrow. I'll sign the death certificate within 6 hours of administration. Natural causes. Cardiac arrest secondary to undiagnosed arrhythmia. The family will be too shocked to question it. We'll have the funeral arranged before anyone thinks to ask for an autopsy. And the girl? Won't know what's happening until she wakes up 6 feet under. If the paralytic doesn't kill her first, the suffocation will. Either way, Marcus, By this time next week, you'll control the entire company. Every patent, every research division, everything Gilbert built. The window closes with a soft click. Henry sits in the dark, pasta container forgotten in his lap, his mind racing through compound structures and antidote protocols he hasn't thought about since they stripped his credentials and threw him away. Tetrodotoxin binds to sodium channels, blocks nerve signal transmission, creates a death-like state that's fooled coroners for centuries in pufferfish poisoning cases. But there are antagonists, calcium channel modulators, sodium lactate, atropine for respiratory support. He has 3 days. 3 days to remember everything he once knew, to scavenge what he needs from medical waste bins and pharmacy dumpsters, to synthesize something that might work with equipment that doesn't exist and ingredients he'll have to steal. 3 days to save a girl whose name he doesn't know. Henry stands, his joints protesting, and looks up at the dark window. He's been invisible for 5 years, a ghost haunting the margins of a world that decided he didn't matter. Not anymore. He shoulders his bag and walks into the night, already planning which hospital to hit first, which compounds he can extract from discarded 4 bags, how to build a makeshift lab in the abandoned warehouse where he sleeps. Somewhere in that mansion, a 19-year-old girl has no idea she has less than 12 hours to live. But she has him now, and Henry Cole refuses to let another person die when he could have saved them. The hydraulic mechanism hums to life with a sound like distant thunder. The brass rails begin their descent, lowering Pamela Dandy's mahogany casket inch by careful inch toward the earth that will swallow her whole. The minister's voice rises over the machinery, something about dust and ashes and the certain hope of resurrection. Henry runs. He crashes through the outer ring of mourners, his bag bouncing against his hip, his breath tearing from his lungs. People scatter like startled birds. A woman in pearls gasps. Someone shouts for security. The casket drops another 6 inches. Stop. Henry's voice cracks across the ceremony like a whip. Stop the mechanism. He reaches the burial carpet and throws himself at the controls, his hands slamming the emergency brake. The mechanism grinds to a halt with a metallic shriek. The casket hangs suspended 2 feet into the grave, tilted at an angle that makes Pamela's body shift slightly inside. Security guards converge from 3 directions, but Henry plants himself between them and the casket, arms spread wide. She's alive, he gasps. Don't bury her. Gilbert Dandy stands frozen, his face a battleground between grief and something that looks dangerously like hope. His mouth opens, but no words come out. Marcus Graves steps forward, his face twisted with righteous fury. This man is clearly disturbed. Get him away from her. Dr. Walsh moves to Marcus's side, her voice steady and professional. Mr. Dandy, I must insist, as Pamela's physician and as the doctor who pronounced her death 48 hours ago, that this man is delusional. I examined your daughter myself. There was no heartbeat, no respiration, no pupillary response. She's gone. Henry pulls the vial from his coat with shaking hands. Tetrodotoxin derivative, he says. A paralytic compound that mimics death. It suppresses the heartbeat below detectable levels, drops body temperature, dilates the pupils. Your daughter was poisoned with it. That's absurd, Dr. Walsh snaps. I don't know what you think you're doing, but how do you know my name? Henry's voice cuts through hers. I never told you my name. Dr. Walsh's face goes white. The silence stretches like a wire about to snap. Gilbert takes a step forward, his eyes locked on Henry. What did you say? What kind of poison? Tetrodotoxin derivative. It blocks sodium channels in nerve cells, creates profound paralysis that can last 24 to 72 hours. The victim appears completely dead, no pulse, no breathing, no response. But they're conscious, trapped inside their own body. If you bury her now, she'll wake up in that box. This is insane, Marcus says. Gilbert, you cannot possibly. You said she died of cardiac arrest, Henry interrupts. But you didn't order an autopsy. You didn't run a full toxicology panel. You signed the death certificate within hours and recommended immediate burial with no embalming. Why? An elderly woman pushes through the crowd, her silver hair caught in the wind. Margaret Dandy, Gilbert's sister, her eyes sharp behind wire-rimmed glasses. I read about this, she says. Years ago, a medical journal article about pufferfish toxin and zombification folklore in Haiti. The poison creates a death-like state that fools even trained physicians. Aunt Margaret, Marcus says, his voice tight. This is hardly. Let him try, Margaret says. She looks at her brother. Gilbert, what if he's right? What if there's even a chance? Gilbert's hands tremble at his sides. Tears spill down his cheeks. He looks at Henry and sees not a madman, but a man who has lost everything and is trying desperately to save someone else from the same fate. Open it, Gilbert whispers. Gilbert, you can't. I said open it. The cemetery workers look at each other, then release the mechanism and lift the casket back to ground level. Henry steps forward, his vial clutched in both hands, and prays that his rusty chemistry will be enough. Henry's hands shake as he lifts the casket lid fully open. The hinges creak in the silence. Pamela Dandy lies before them in her white dress, hands folded across her chest, a single white rose between her fingers. Her skin is the color of marble. Her lips are faintly blue. She looks like a painting of death, beautiful and terrible and perfectly still. Henry leans over the casket, his fingers finding the pulse point at her throat. He presses down, searching, counting. The crowd leans in with him, a collective held breath. There, he whispers. Faint. Maybe 4 beats per minute. Undetectable by standard equipment, but it's there. He unscrews the vial cap with trembling fingers. The liquid inside is clear as water, synthesized from stolen compounds and desperation and half-remembered formulas from another life. This is madness, someone whispers. Henry parts Pamela's lips gently, the way you'd handle something infinitely fragile. Her mouth is cold. He tilts her head back slightly and lets a single drop fall beneath her tongue. The tetrodotoxin binds to sodium channels, he says, his voice steady now, falling into the rhythm of teaching. It blocks the electrical signals that tell muscles to move, lungs to breathe, heart to beat. The body shuts down, but the mind remains aware. Trapped. This antidote, it's a calcium channel modulator combined with sodium lactate. If I'm right, it should begin to reverse the binding process within minutes. Minutes pass like hours. The crowd watches in horrified fascination. Someone's phone is raised high, recording everything. The wind moves through the cemetery trees. A car horn sounds distant on the highway. Nothing happens. Dr. Walsh's voice cuts through the silence, sharp with vindication. You see? This is exactly what I... Pamela's chest rises. Barely. A movement so slight it could be imagination, could be wind disturbing her dress. But it's not imagination. Henry sees it. Gilbert sees it. Margaret sees it, her hand flying to her mouth. Wait, Henry breathes. Wait. Marcus moves fast, lunging toward the casket, his face twisted with panic. Enough of this. She's dead. This circus ends now. But Gilbert is faster. He catches Marcus by the shoulder and throws him back with strength born of sudden, terrible understanding. Stay away from my daughter. Henry administers the second drop, his hands no longer shaking. Under the tongue, into the bloodstream, through the blood-brain barrier if God is merciful. Please, he whispers. Please. Pamela's fingers twitch. A small movement, just the index finger of her right hand, but unmistakable. The white rose shifts, its petals trembling. Oh God, Gilbert chokes out. Oh God, she's... Her eyes move beneath closed lids. Rapid eye movement, the kind that signals consciousness fighting its way to the surface. Her chest rises again, deeper this time, her body trying to remember how to breathe. No, Marcus says. No, no, no. He stumbles backward, his hand going to his jacket pocket. Something falls from his grip. A syringe hits the grass with a soft thud, its barrel filled with clear liquid, its needle catching the autumn light. Everyone sees it. Everyone sees Marcus see it. Everyone sees the moment his face changes from panic to the terrible knowledge of exposure. Pamela coughs. It's a wet, desperate sound, the sound of lungs that have forgotten how to expel air. Her body convulses slightly. Her eyelids flutter. Security guards move toward Marcus, but he doesn't run. He stands frozen, staring at the syringe in the grass like it's a snake. Dr. Walsh makes a small sound, something between a gasp and a sob, and her medical bag slips from her fingers. Henry leans over Pamela, his hand on her forehead. You're okay, he says softly. You're going to be okay. Breathe. Just breathe. Pamela's eyes open, blue and confused and alive. They fix on Henry's face, on this stranger with wild hair and a gray beard and eyes full of tears. Her lips move. No sound comes out, but Henry reads the shape of the word. Help. I've got you, Henry whispers. You're safe now. Behind him, Gilbert Dandy falls to his knees in the grass and weeps like a man who has watched his daughter rise from the dead. The ambulance screams through Riverside's gates with Pamela inside, oxygen mask over her face, paramedics working to stabilize her vitals. Henry rides in the back, his hand wrapped around hers because when they tried to separate them, her fingers had tightened with desperate strength. Gilbert follows in a police cruiser, his world tilting between miracle and murder. At Mercy General Hospital, doctors swarm. Toxicology, cardiology, neurology. They wheel Pamela into emergency, and Henry finally releases her hand, stumbling back against the corridor wall as reality crashes over him. A detective approaches, badge clipped to his belt. Nathan Cross, homicide. I need your statement. Henry nods, but his legs won't hold him anymore. He slides down the wall to sit on the polished floor, his coat spreading around him like broken wings. Inside the examination room, Pamela drifts in and out of consciousness. Gilbert holds her hand, his face pressed against her fingers, whispering prayers and apologies. When her eyes finally focus, really focus, she looks at him with confusion that slowly sharpens into memory. Dad, she whispers through the oxygen mask. Her voice is raw and used. Dr. Walsh. She gave me an injection. Said it was for my headaches. Gilbert's grip tightens. When, sweetheart? 2 days ago. Maybe 3? Pamela's brow furrows with effort. At the house. She said new migraine treatment. I felt the needle, and then. Her breathing quickens. Then I couldn't move. Couldn't breathe. Couldn't scream. I could hear everything, but I couldn't. The heart monitor spikes. A nurse rushes in, adjusting the 4. You're safe now, Gilbert says, his voice breaking. You're safe. Outside at the cemetery, Detective Cross's partner secures the syringe from the grass using evidence gloves. She holds it up to the fading light. The barrel is full and used. Whatever Marcus Graves had planned, he never got the chance. Marcus and Dr. Walsh stand 30 feet apart, both in handcuffs, both silent. Marcus stares at nothing. Dr. Walsh keeps looking toward the parking lot like escape might still be possible. Read them their rights, Cross says into his radio. Attempted murder. Conspiracy. We'll add more once the girl talks. By evening, the media descends like locusts. News vans line the hospital parking lot, their satellite dishes reaching toward the sky. Reporters shout questions at anyone entering or leaving. The story is already viral. Cell phone footage from the funeral, shaky and dramatic. Henry's desperate voice shouting while security drags him away. The headlines write themselves. Heiress buried alive. Homeless hero stops murder. Pharmaceutical empire's dark secret exposed. Inside, Henry sits in a waiting room chair, still wearing his stained coat, his vial empty in his pocket. A hospital administrator brings coffee and a blanket. A nurse asks if he's hungry. A doctor wants to examine him. He's not all right. For 5 years he's been invisible. A ghost moving through a world that stopped seeing him. And now there are cameras outside and reporters calling his name and people treating him like he's human again. It's too much. Too fast. Mr. Cole? A young reporter has somehow made it past security, holding a microphone. Can you tell us how you knew? How did you create the antidote? Are you really homeless? Henry opens his mouth, but no words come. That's enough, a security guard says, ushering the reporter out. But there will be more. The invisibility that protected him is gone. Henry pulls the blanket tighter and closes his eyes. But Pamela Dandy is alive. And that is worth everything. The courtroom fills 2 hours before proceedings begin. Every seat is claimed, reporters shoulder to shoulder in the gallery, sketch artists poised with charcoal. Outside, protesters wave signs. Justice for Pamela. Corporate greed kills. The trial of Marcus Graves and Dr. Eleanor Walsh has become more than a murder case. It's a referendum on wealth, power, and how far people will go to claim both. Pamela sits in the front row beside her father, wearing navy blue, her hand tied in his. Dark circles still shadow her eyes despite weeks of recovery. She insisted on being here. Insisted on looking them in the eye. The prosecution's case builds like a wall, brick by methodical brick. Lead prosecutor Janet Torres presents the toxicology report first. Dr. Michael Chun from State Forensics takes the stand. We found tetrodotoxin derivative in Miss Dandy's blood, hair, and tissue samples, he testifies. This is not naturally occurring. It requires sophisticated pharmaceutical knowledge to synthesize. The concentration was precisely calibrated, enough to induce complete paralysis and mimic death, but not enough to cause actual fatality. This was expertly done. Torres holds up an evidence bag containing the syringe Marcus dropped. And this, doctor? Potassium chloride. A lethal dose. Injected directly into the heart. Death would occur within minutes. The jury leans forward. Every eye tracks to Marcus Graves sitting rigid at the defense table, his expensive suit unable to hide the desperation underneath. The syringe bears only Mr. Graves' fingerprints. Torres continues. The defense objects, argues contamination, but the wall keeps building. Dr. Walsh breaks on day 3. Her attorney negotiates a deal, 25 years if she testifies against Marcus. She takes the stand in an orange jumpsuit, her voice barely audible. He promised me $10 million, she says. And chief medical officer once he controlled Dandy Pharmaceuticals. He said Pamela was too young, too idealistic. That she'd destroy the company with her plans to provide cancer drugs at cost. He said we were saving the company, not committing murder. So you knowingly administered a paralytic toxin to a healthy 19-year-old girl? Dr. Walsh's face crumples. Yes. On day 5, Henry takes the stand. Gilbert's tailor fitted him with a charcoal suit. His beard is trimmed, his hair cut, but his hands still shake as he's sworn in. He describes the night at the loading dock, the voices through the window, the medical terminology that reminded him who he used to be. His voice is steady, clear, every word carrying truth. Marcus's attorney tries to discredit him. Isn't it true you were fired for research fraud? I was falsely accused, Henry says quietly. We've since discovered those accusations were fabricated by Mr. Graves when I questioned certain practices. On day 7, as the jury prepares to deliberate, Marcus stands suddenly, his chair scraping back. She was never meant to run that company. His voice echoes through the courtroom. She's a child with foolish ideas. Her mother built an empire, and this girl wanted to give it away. Low-cost cancer drugs, free treatments. It would have destroyed everything. Security moves toward him, but he keeps shouting. I built that company as much as Gilbert. I deserved. The judge's gavel slams down. Mr. Graves, sit down. The jury has heard enough. To do. Deliberation takes 4 hours. Guilty on all counts. The judge removes her glasses and looks at both defendants with contempt. Life without possibility of parole. Marcus closes his eyes. Dr. Walsh weeps. Pamela sits perfectly still, her father's arm around her shoulders, and feels the weight of everything she almost lost and everything she still has left to do. Gilbert Dandy can't sleep anymore. He lies awake in his empty house and replays every missed sign, every moment he should have seen the truth. Marcus at his elbow for 20 years, poisoning more than just his daughter, poisoning the company, the mission his late wife built. And Henry Cole, destroyed by fabricated lies while Gilbert signed off on his termination without question. The guilt eats him alive. So he does the only thing he can. He fights to make it right. The company's internal investigation takes 6 weeks. They dig through Marcus's files, his emails, his carefully constructed web of deception. What they find turns Gilbert's stomach. Henry Cole's termination wasn't based on research fraud. It was based on documents Marcus created himself, data he manipulated, witnesses he paid. Henry had questioned a drug trial Marcus wanted to rush to market, a treatment that would generate billions but hadn't been properly tested. So Marcus removed him. Gilbert calls a press conference on a cold January morning. Henry stands beside him, uncomfortable in a borrowed suit, while cameras flash. Henry Cole is innocent, Gilbert says, his voice breaking. He was destroyed by a man I trusted. The fraud allegations were manufactured. Mr. Cole's research was impeccable, his integrity beyond question. On behalf of Dandy Pharmaceuticals, I offer my deepest apologies and whatever restitution he'll accept. The headlines read differently now. Falsely accused scientist vindicated. Hero's reputation restored. Pharmaceutical whistleblower gets justice. Gilbert offers him everything. Chief Research Officer. A corner office. A salary with 6 zeros. But Henry stands in Gilbert's study and shakes his head. I can't, he says quietly. Not yet. It's too much, too fast. Then tell me what you need. Henry looks out the window at the estate grounds where he once scrounged for food. A small apartment. Something simple. And access to a lab. Somewhere I can work without pressure. I need to remember who I was before I can become anything else. Gilbert nods, understanding. You'll have it by the end of the week. The apartment is near the university. 1 bedroom, clean and spare, with furniture that doesn't carry ghosts. The lab is in the research annex, a small space with new equipment and no one watching. Henry spends his days there, slowly rebuilding his confidence, his hands remembering the precise movements of science, his mind waking after 5 years of survival mode. Pamela finds him there on a Tuesday in February. She knocks on the lab door even though it's open. May I come in? Henry sets down his instruments. Of course. She enters slowly, her movements still careful. The paralytic is gone, but the memory lingers in how she carries herself, like her body might betray her again. I wanted to thank you properly, she says. Not in a hospital or courtroom, but here, where it's quiet. You already thanked me. Not enough. She looks around at the equations on his whiteboard, the compounds in careful rows. What are you working on? Henry hesitates. Then something in her curiosity unlocks him. Drug delivery systems. Ways to get medicine past the blood-brain barrier. Would you like to see? Pamela nods, and Henry begins to explain, his voice gaining strength. She listens intently, asking questions that prove she understands. You're studying biochemistry, he says. Starting next semester. I deferred last fall. She doesn't say why. They both know why. You'll be brilliant at it. How do you know? Because you're asking the right questions. She visits again the next week. And the week after. Sometimes they talk about science. Sometimes they sit in comfortable silence while he works and she reads. Sometimes she tells him what it was like, being trapped in her own body, hearing them plan her burial, unable to scream. Henry listens without trying to fix it, understanding that some traumas just need witness. Slowly, carefully, in the quiet space of that small lab, 2 damaged people begin to heal in each other's presence. Spring arrives and Pamela walks through the university gates with her head high and her textbooks heavy in her bag. She's 20 now, older than her years, carrying knowledge about mortality that most students won't face for decades. Her classmates whisper, "That's the girl who was almost buried alive," but she ignores them and focuses on organic chemistry, cellular biology, the beautiful complexity of molecules that can heal or harm. She's determined to earn this degree on merit, to prove she deserves her inheritance not because of her last name, but because she understands the science behind it. Henry flourishes in his quiet lab. His breakthrough in nanoparticle drug delivery catches the attention of the research community. Papers are published. Awards are mentioned. Gilbert insists on hosting a gala in his honor, and Henry reluctantly agrees, uncomfortable in his rented tuxedo but grateful for the recognition. The ballroom glitters with pharmaceutical elite and medical professionals. Pamela stands near the bar in a green silk dress, watching Henry navigate conversations with awkward grace. He's come so far from the broken man at the cemetery, but there's still hesitation in how he holds himself, like he's waiting for someone to remember he doesn't belong. Then Sarah Chin approaches him. Pamela notices immediately. The young oncologist is beautiful in an effortless way, her smile genuine as she introduces herself. Dr. Chun from Memorial's Cancer Research Division. I've read your work on blood-brain barrier penetration. It's extraordinary. Henry's face transforms. Someone sees his work, not his history. They talk rapidly, hands gesturing, voices animated with shared passion. Sarah laughs at something he says, and Henry laughs back, the sound startling in its pure joy. Pamela's chest tightens. She's been visiting Henry's lab for months now, sitting in companionable silence, sharing coffee, learning from him. And somewhere in those quiet afternoons, gratitude became something deeper, something she didn't name because naming it would make it real. But watching him with Sarah, she sees the truth. Henry is smiling without the shadow of trauma behind his eyes. Sarah represents everything Pamela can't. A fresh start. A relationship unburdened by the memory of paralysis and near death and desperate resurrection. Henry needs that. Deserves that. Pamela loves him enough to recognize it. She approaches them, her smile practiced and bright. Dr. Chun, she says, extending her hand. I'm Pamela Dandy. Henry saved my life. Sarah's eyes widen with recognition. Oh my God. You're the girl in the casket. Yes. Pamela keeps her voice light. Henry's brilliant, isn't he? His work is going to change everything. It really is, Sarah agrees, her hand finding Henry's arm naturally. "You should give him your number," Pamela says, looking at Sarah but feeling Henry's confused gaze on her face. "He's terrible at networking, but he's wonderful at everything else." Sarah laughs. "I was hoping to." Later, Henry finds Pamela on the terrace, staring at city lights through tears she won't let fall. "Why did you do that?" he asks quietly. "Because you deserve to be happy," she says. "And she makes you happy in a way I never could." "Pamela." "No." She turns to face him, her smile breaking. "You gave me my life back, Henry. Let me give you yours." She walks back inside before he can argue, before she can take it back, her heart cracking with every step. But love, she's learning, sometimes means letting go. 3 years pass like water finding its level, settling into patterns that feel inevitable in retrospect. Henry and Sarah marry on a Saturday in May. The ceremony small and intimate in a garden overlooking the harbor. Henry wears a simple gray suit, his hand steady as he slides the ring onto Sarah's finger. His eyes are clear, unburdened, full of a quiet joy that Pamela recognizes as the sound of a man who has finally come home to himself. Pamela sits in the front row beside her father, wearing pale blue, her smile genuine even as something bittersweet catches in her throat. She's learned to carry both feelings at once. Happiness for Henry and the ghost of what might have been if circumstances were different, if trauma didn't bind them in ways that made romance impossible. At the reception, Sarah finds her by the cake table. "Thank you," she says simply, "for that night at the gala, for giving him permission to move forward." Pamela shakes her head. "I didn't give permission. I just stepped aside so he could see what was already there." They embrace, these two women who love the same man in different ways, and it feels like benediction. Pamela finds her own kind of love 6 months later at a fundraiser for refugee medical services. James Carter is a human rights lawyer with kind eyes and calloused hands from building houses on weekends. He doesn't know who she is at first, doesn't recognize the girl from the headlines. He just sees someone arguing passionately about pharmaceutical access in developing nations and thinks, "I want to know her." Their first date is at a soup kitchen. Their second is rebuilding a school in Guatemala. By their third, Pamela realizes that James sees her not as the girl who survived, but as the woman she's becoming. Someone determined to use her inheritance as a force for good in a world that desperately needs it. Gilbert watches his daughter fall in love and feels something unlock in his own chest. He spent 3 years in suspended animation, functioning but not living, punishing himself for the sins of trust misplaced. But watching Pamela laugh over dinner with James, watching her plan low-cost drug distribution networks with the fierce intelligence her mother had, he finally allows himself to grieve properly. He visits his wife's grave on a cold afternoon and tells her everything. About Marcus's betrayal, about almost losing Pamela, about the homeless man who saved them both. He weeps for the first time since the funeral that never was, and when he stands to leave, the weight is lighter. The families intertwine like roots of different trees growing close. Thanksgiving at the Dandy estate with Henry and Sarah. Christmas at Henry and Sarah's modest home with Pamela and James. Sunday dinners that rotate houses, the table growing longer as years pass and children arrive. When Henry's daughter is born on a spring morning, he holds her with trembling hands and tears streaming down his face. Sarah touches his shoulder. "What should we name her?" Henry looks across the hospital room where Pamela stands with James, her hand on her own growing belly, her eyes already wet with understanding. "Pamela," Henry says, "if that's all right." The young woman he saved covers her mouth with both hands and nods, unable to speak through the joy and the honor and the recognition of what this means. That love doesn't have to be romantic to be profound. That family isn't always blood. That the man she let go has held on to her anyway in the way that matters most. They've created something Marcus Graves could never understand in his greed-soaked calculations. A chosen family built on mutual respect, sacrifice, and the recognition that love takes many forms. That saving someone's life can mean loving them enough to step aside. That being saved can mean honoring that sacrifice by building something beautiful with the gift you've been given. In the hospital room, holding baby Pamela while grown Pamela weeps with joy, Henry finally understands what redemption looks like. It looks like this. 10 years after the funeral that never was, the letter arrives on a Tuesday morning. Pamela is in her office at Dandy Pharmaceuticals, reviewing distribution plans for malaria treatments in sub-Saharan Africa, when her assistant brings in the envelope marked with the state prison system's return address. Her hands shake as she reads. Marcus Graves' handwriting is shaky now, weakened by age and illness. The letter is brief, stripped of the eloquence he once wielded like a weapon. I need you to know that I see what I destroyed. I need you to know that I'm sorry, even though sorry means nothing. I don't ask for forgiveness. I don't deserve it. But I needed to say it before I die. Pamela sits with the letter for hours, reading it again and again, searching for manipulation or self-pity. She finds only exhaustion and something that might be genuine remorse. That evening, she brings it to dinner at her father's house. Henry and Sarah are there with their children. James helps their son with homework at the kitchen table. It's ordinary and beautiful, this life they've built from the ashes of Marcus's greed. She reads the letter aloud. The room falls silent. Gilbert's reaction is immediate, his face darkening with rage. He deserves nothing from you. Not a thought. Not a moment of your time. Let him die with his guilt. Henry says nothing, but his eyes find Pamela's across the table, and she sees understanding there. He knows what it's like to carry the weight of another person's sins, to let bitterness eat away at the good you're trying to build. Pamela folds the letter carefully. I need to see him, she says. Not for him. For me. Gilbert starts to protest, but Sarah reaches across to touch his hand. Let her do what she needs to do. The prison is 3 hours north, a gray fortress against gray sky. Pamela makes the drive alone, her father and Henry waiting in the parking lot, because she asked them to come, but not to follow her inside. Marcus Graves is unrecognizable. Prison has carved him hollow. Illness has stolen his color, and time has taken everything else. He sits across from her in the visiting room, his hands cuffed, his eyes wet with something like shame. I didn't think you'd come, he says. Pamela looks at him for a long moment. This man who tried to bury her alive, who destroyed Henry, who betrayed her father. She feels anger, yes, but also something unexpected, pity. I'm not here to make you feel better, she says quietly. I'm here because I'm tired of carrying hatred. It's heavy, Marcus, and I have better things to carry. His face crumples. I'm sorry. I know it doesn't. You're right. It doesn't. She leans forward. You took something from me that I'll never get back. My sense of safety, my ability to close my eyes without remembering what it felt like to be paralyzed and aware. But you didn't take my life. Henry made sure of that. And I've built something beautiful with the years you tried to steal. Tears run down Marcus's weathered face. I forgive you, Pamela says, and the words taste like freedom. Not because you deserve it, but because I deserve peace. I deserve to walk out of here and not think about you anymore. I deserve to live without this weight. She stands, the chair scraping against concrete. Goodbye, Marcus. She doesn't look back. Outside, the autumn sun breaks through clouds, warming her face. Her father and Henry stand by the car, worry written in their postures. When they see her expression, clear, unburdened, they understand. Gilbert pulls her into his arms. Henry squeezes her shoulder. No words are necessary. On the drive home, Pamela asks them to stop at Riverside Cemetery. She walks alone to her mother's grave, carrying white roses, and kneels in the grass. Thank you, she whispers, though she's not sure if she's talking to her mother or to Henry, or to God, or to all of them at once. Thank you for the homeless man who refused to let death win. Thank you for teaching me that redemption is possible for everyone willing to do the work of becoming worthy of it. She places the flowers against the headstone and walks back to the car where her father and Henry wait. These two men who loved her enough to let her make her own choices, even the hardest ones. Some debts can never be repaid, but mercy can still be chosen. And in choosing it, Pamela finally sets herself free. Some people think redemption is about being forgiven, but maybe it's not. Maybe redemption is about what you choose to build after the worst thing has already happened. Pamela was almost buried alive, but she chose not to bury herself in hatred. Henry lost everything, but he chose not to lose who he was. And a man who tried to control everything lost it all, because power without conscience always collapses in the end. This story wasn't about death. It was about what we do with the life we're given back. So here's the question I want to leave you with. If you were given a second chance, would you choose revenge or peace? Tell me in the comments. I'd read every single one. And if stories like this move you, challenge you, or stay with you after the screen goes dark, Like the video, share it with someone who needs this story, and subscribe to Against All Odds Stories, where the overlooked rise, the broken endure, and second chances are earned.